welcome back. This is lesson 10 of the Dynamic WordPress course for beginners. Now, in our previous lesson, we talked about how you can build your single posts and your single post templates to ensure that whatever data you store inside of your single post can be retrieved into your single post template in order to make your site very dynamic. Now, in this lesson, we're going to continue right where we left off, but this time we're going to talk about how you can build really dynamic aspects of your website by determining what shows up and when. What do I mean? I'm going to use two scenarios to demonstrate this to you. The first scenario, I'm going to show you that right now. Let's come back to our WordPress website, and down here, you take a look at the projects that we have displaying here. Now, if you remember what we did previously in the previous lessons, we specified in each of these projects, if we can just click on app niche as an example, we specified the project completed date. Do you recall that? Great. Now, because of that, we want to be able to show which projects was just newly completed. So if a project was just newly completed, we want to show a new tag somewhere here inside of that listing. So a person can just, by a glance, just take a look at the project and know, oh, this is a new project. So how do we do that? Let me show you. Before we go ahead to edit this listing, let's come back to the dashboard and toggle on the relevant module inside of JetEngine, and that introduces us to dynamic visibility. If we come inside of JetEngine right here, we can come inside of modules and toggle on dynamic visibility. Once we're done, we click on save. Now, we have this new module toggled on, which entire purpose is to help us to show or hide any element we want to on the website page based on a condition that we set by ourselves. So let me show you. It's pretty simple. We're going to come inside of the front end now and just edit with Jet plugins the listing of projects. Let's just edit the listing of projects because that's what we're dealing with right now. Okay, now the idea here is that we want to add a new tag right here at the top. Now we know that inside of the container, we just have a dynamic field widget which shows the title, the heading title, and we have the container here which shows the dynamic image. Now, inside of that container that has the dynamic image inside of it, we want to add a new widget. Whatever element we want to add here will be contained inside of that container. So let's add that element. Let's say we want to add a new heading widget right here, and we want to remove the relevance from that heading widget. By coming inside of the HTML tag, we don't want to give this any heading level because it's not a heading. We want to instead change this to a div, which means, well, it's just text on the page. It has no real relevance in trying to, let's say, segment parts of the page. It's just text on the page, right? So if you add the heading widget to change that to a div, that's okay. Now, what you want to type inside of here, we could type maybe new, something like that is totally fine. Now, we also want this to be at the top left of this container. If we want to, we can drag this to the top, but we see it's still right above here. To make this lose its position inside of the document flow, we can give this a position absolute. We can come inside of advanced and come down here to where you have position and set this to absolute. And as you can see, it just leaves its position, even though it's still right here physically inside of here, but it is now right on top of this image. So this is good. This is very good. And it's only contained by this container. Great. Now let's come back to that heading and come to advanced, and down here, we want to maybe give this a background color of, let's say we want to give this a background color, maybe this one. That should be fine. Let's come to style. We want to come to the text color and maybe give it a text color of this. Let's just add some padding right around there so that this looks okay for us. I'm going to come inside of padding right here and come down here to M, and maybe we want to select 0.3. We're just going to add 0.3 right here. So 0.3, and that's okay. Now, here's what happens when we click on publish and we come to the front end and we refresh this. Here is what we find. We find that all of the projects right here on the page have the new tag on them. Now, this is not the effects that we're looking for. We're not looking to have all of the projects here to have the new tag on them. We're looking only for projects that are actually new. Meaning, let's say we want to say projects that are after the date of May 30, 2025, right? first off, let's remind ourselves of how these things are stored. If you click on Appnish as an example right here, and you scroll down, you see the project completed date is returned right here. Now, if we come inside of the listing of projects, and as Appnish is an example here, let's just add maybe a dynamic field widget right here. We want to drag the dynamic field widget down below here. And instead of the source being this, we want the source instead to be metadata because, of course, we specified that inside of our meta field. So we're dealing with metadata here. Now, inside of meta field, we want to down here select project completed date. And you see, this is exactly how the data is stored in the database. It's returning that to us. Now, remember, we want this new tag right here to only show on projects that are after the day of May 30, 2025. So to do that, we want to come inside of heading right here, where we are, come inside of advanced and scroll down here until you find dynamic visibility right here. Now, dynamic visibility will only show up inside of here when you have that module in the backend for JetEngine toggled on. So it's okay. We can click on enable right now and we want to specify the condition. The condition here, we're going to say we want this to show when. We're going to come inside of conditions and specify that. Inside of here, we want to say if it is greater than, which is the condition. You see, you have quite a number of options inside of here. I cannot, of course, go through every single one of these conditions. We will not be done here in the next 8 hours, okay? Trust me, there are lots of conditions inside of here. You can very easily mix and match these things based on what your conditions are. For example, if you want this item or this element on the page to only show if a person is logged in, you have something here for user logged in. If you say, okay, well, it's a membership site, people can be logged in, but only people with this specific user role, you can specify user role is and specify the user roles of people who are allowed to see that item. So for everybody else, it's not going to show. Isn't this marvelous? Isn't this nice? I think it's great. Now let's proceed with what our idea is here. Our idea is that we want this to be greater than what? First of all, it's asking us right here, what field do you want to compare this against? So the question basically is, where do you want to get the date field that you want to compare this with in order to show this new tag? And here inside the field, we can very easily specify that. We can click on dynamic tags, and down here inside of JetEngine, we want to specify custom field because that's exactly is what it is, right? Now inside of custom field, we want to come to field and we want to specify project completed date. Now, it's checking project completed date, which means that what it has retrieved inside of field right here is exactly this. Now, it's going to ask us, so greater than this. So what should be greater than this? And that is what we'll add inside of our value. So let's just paste the value here. We said 2025, May 30. So let's say any project after the day of 2025, May 30, we want that to show the tag of new. We can, of course, remove this dynamic field widget inside of here. We don't need that. I only put that on the page to show you the data that's being retrieved from the database, right? You got that? Great. Now we can click on publish. We can come to the front end. Let's just come back to our homepage right here by clicking on the logo, and we can scroll down here and take a look at what we're having here. In each of these listing elements, you take note that only one of them has the new tag. If we click on somewhere and just view that in the front end, you see the project completed date is sometime in June, which means it is after the date we specified, which is May. Now, if we say here that maybe we want to change this, instead of it to show new, we want it down here to say old, but instead of saying it should be greater than, we want to say less than. So we're going to come inside of content. Let's specify old inside of here, click on publish, come to the front end, refresh the home page. Let's take a look at what we have right there. And you see this is old, this is old, this is old. This has nothing showing inside of here. Now you get the idea, right? Let me restore it back to what it was. Okay, now it's restored. What is the point? The point is that for every single situation, whether you're inside of a listing or whether you're inside of a single template, you can make use of dynamic visibility conditions to show or hide items based on the conditions that you set. Isn't this nice? Let me show you a second scenario here. Now, there could be a situation in the future where your client may say, well, I need control over whether to show or hide this particular element in the back end. And you can very easily make that happen. Let me show you an example. If we come back to JetEngine, let's just come back inside of meta boxes. You remember that we had a project details meta box here, which contained a number of meta fields, such as the project completed dates, client, and images. Now, we want to be able to add a toggle here that says hide this. So let's click on new meta field and we want to say hide this. And we'll click out of it. And inside of field type, let's change this instead of text. We want to change this to, let's just scroll and find the switcher field right there. That's great. Now, once you select the switcher field, what you're basically saying is that inside of the database, we want this to either have the value true or the value false, right? Great. Now, if you select this and come back to update meta box and you just come inside of any of this listing grid template. Let's open Samir as an example right here. And you take a look at this section right inside of here where you have the project completed dates and all of this, all this data right here. Now, let's say you want to hide all of this when a person toggles that in the backend. Let's come to the backend and take a look at what we have. Inside of here, we can scroll down right here. We see hide this. If we toggle this on right now and click on save, we see nothing really happens here. If we come back to the front and we refresh this, nothing really happens. But a new value has been stored in the database that should determine that this is hidden. So let's try to ensure that that condition is honored by coming inside of our single post template. We can just edit that inside of here. Let's close this out. We don't need that. Let's also close this out. I don't like too many tabs. It confuses me. Now I can come back down here and you have these items right here. Now let's open this up, see what we have here. We have this item and we have this too. Now, if we want this to only affect the project completed date and the date we have physically here, we can, if we want to, inside of this container, add another container. Let's just add another container inside of there. We can drag that container to the top. And inside of that container, we can then add the heading and the dynamic field. Okay, great. Now, both of them are inside of one single container. Now, on that one container, we can, if we want to, specify a dynamic visibility condition. And what will that be? Let's do that. We can click on container, come inside of advanced, and then inside of here, we want to select dynamic visibility, toggle that on to enable it. And here we want to say, let's show this element, or let's say in this case, because remember what we specified inside of here is hide this. So instead we want to say hide this element if what? We want to set inside of conditions, we want to come inside of the condition right here, and we want to say if, we're not going to select equal this time, we're going to come down here and we want to select this JetEngine specific condition, which is switcher enabled. Once we select that, you see you only have one field right here. And because JetEngine knows that once you have your switcher enabled, you either have true when it's enabled or false when it is disabled. So basically, it's going to check whether it's true or false when you select switcher enabled. In this case, it wants to check that it is true. Okay. Now, remember, our condition is you want to hide this element when that toggle is on in the back end. So where you have field, you want to come to dynamic tags and you want to specify that switcher field. So here we want to come to JetEngine, come to custom field, select that hide this meta field right there. So we're saying if hide this is toggled on, which is switcher enabled, we need to hide this element. Okay. Now, if we click on publish, we come to the front end. We see right now it is still showing on the page, but once we refresh the page, let's see what happens. Once we refresh, we see right here that it is totally gone. Now, if you come inside of edit project, let's just edit it and come inside of here. We can scroll down and toggle this off just to test things out. Toggle this off, click on save, come to the front end. We want to refresh this just to check that this thing is actually working the way we expect it to. And when we refresh, we see it's back right here. Isn't this marvelous? Just so you know, you can add multiple conditions inside of that one single condition. And I can show you how to do that very simply. If you come inside of the editor right here and just take a look at here where you have these conditions, you see right inside of dynamic visibility here for that one single condition, you can very easily add another item right here. Let's just say you want to add another item, which is going to be another condition. You can specify here, maybe you want this to be less than something, maybe a field, and add the value just as we did before, right? Now, if you want to do that and add as many conditions as you want, you will also need to specify the relation between all of these conditions. So when you say and, what you're basically saying is that every single one of these conditions must be evaluated to be true for these to work. If you say or, you're saying any of them which match the condition you specify inside of this should be enough to hide this element, okay? Now, just try to wrap your head around it. I know it's pretty simple for you to grab, but this is a stepping stone to future complicated scenarios which you can very easily achieve. Now, let's remove these two conditions as we don't need that right here. We can return this back to and. It really doesn't matter what the relation is as long as there is simply one condition inside of here. Okay, now this is okay for us, and this is very, very good. We can click on publish. We have everything working the way we want it to. Now, there could be multiple different situations where you could have on a single page multiple different conditions, such as when I showed you that in the front end as we were dealing with our listing. If we come back here to the home page, you see right here you have a listing grid of 4 listing items, and you have the condition happening inside each of these listing grid items. So it checks Appnish, it says, oh, that's not after the day May 30, so it says this is not new, so it takes it off. It comes to Samaire, it says, oh, that's new, so it adds that. Inside of Railway, it says that's not it, and it removes that. Inside of Neymar, it removes that. So you see that this is actually evaluating this on a per instance basis. Now, here is a word of caution and also an advice from one developer to another. When you're using dynamic visibility, I've had situations where people reached out to me and said, hey, I tried to make my page load faster, but the page doesn't just seem to load fast. Why is all of this happening? Could it be JetEngine has some issues? Could it be there is an Elementor problem here, or even a WordPress problem here? Well, the fact is that sometimes, in fact, most of the times when I check their website, most times they have dynamic visibility conditions everywhere on their website. Inside of a listing, they could have the dynamic visibility conditions maybe like 10 times inside of one single listing grid item. And you know, from what I just discussed with you, that if you have multiple, let's say 10 dynamic visibility conditions inside of a listing grid, you should know that the number of times that that listing grid shows on the page, let's say if it's 4 times, just know that it's 10 multiplied by 4. So 10, 10, 10, 10. So that's 40 evaluations. It's going to evaluate these items 40 times. Now, depending on the complicated nature of that particular visibility condition, it could make your page slow a whole lot down. Here is the advice I was just about to give you. When you make use of dynamic visibility, you want to make use of it very carefully because it could impact your page speed load. And this is no fault of JetEngine or no fault of Elementor or WordPress. This is basically how PHP, which is the underlying programming language for this is how it basically works. Evaluations with conditions such as this increases the time it takes for that page to completely render. So you want to be sure that if, let's say, on the page, you have multiple different elements that use the same conditions. Here's a suggestion. Can't you just bring all of those elements together, if possible, and just put them inside of one single container? As you see what I did inside of here. When you come back inside of the project, you see I put 2 of this inside of one container, and then I did the dynamic visibility on that container. I could have, if I wanted to, done it on this heading as its own. Just come inside of advanced, come here, come to dynamic visibility and do it here. Then come inside of the actual date right here, and I can come inside of advanced and also do it here again. The exact same conditions in 2 places. But what is the smarter way to do this from what we just discussed? The smarter way is to group all of the items together, maybe inside of a container, and then do your dynamic visibility condition on that one container. This way, the number of evaluations you're going to have to render that page in the front end will be reduced to the barest minimum, which means that your page will load a whole lot faster and you will enjoy a very interesting experience. Now, I want to ask you a question. In what situations do you think you're going to need dynamic visibility? Let me know in the comment section below. Let me also know if you benefited from this video, and while you're down there in the comments, hit the like button and also subscribe to this channel so that you get more lessons such as what you just watched. This was lesson 10. In our next lesson, we're going to talk about forms. We're going to talk about how you can use forms to collect data from your users and then make use of these data in a way that you so desire. What we're going to discuss is going to connect with what we already know when we discussed dynamic data. You're going to understand this, you're going to pick it up very, very fast. As always, smart people, my name is Tobi Salami, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay dynamic.